Hey guys, Woods Farm here, just back at working on the Kubelwagen. So I'm going to change it up this next video. For some time I've been doing straight up fabrication, metalworking. I'm going to change it up for the next video or two and shift over to the engine. So this engine, if you remember back, many videos back, came out of the original 1974 thing. It had sat in a guy's field for many years, and that's where I got it. Brought it home. It wasn't seized up, and I actually watched a bunch of videos from a YouTube guy named Musty1 on bringing back old Volkswagen engines, and that really gave me the confidence to go ahead and work on it. So really I stripped it down, all the tin and engine components. It was really dirty. Cleaned it. Replaced some of the obvious parts. It was actually missing some of the ignition parts. I guess it had been scavenged for Volkswagen ignition parts. So I replaced all that stuff, but I didn't do a major engine overhaul. I just cleaned it, replaced what was missing, reassembled it, did a compression check. It had good compression, and I was able to test start it and get it running. And then later this summer, I actually drove it around. It was running. So the engine, as far as I'm concerned, it's a running engine. And now it was running a bit rough. I think that's just a carburetor tuning issue. That said, when I reassembled it after cleaning it, I skipped over a lot of stuff. There was a lot of gaskets and seals and whatnot that need to be replaced. The engine tin needs to be secured properly. I've got new screws for that. I've got new gaskets, seals, various things like that need to get replaced on the engine. So in order to do that, I'm going to remove the engine, and that's for two reasons. It's just easier to work on it, and secondly, I need to paint the engine bay. So in the next week or so, when I get a nice warm day, I'm going to paint that engine bay matte black. And I might just leave it primer, orange oxidized primer color. I might paint it matte black. I don't know, but one way or the other, it's getting painted. And it's going to be way easier to do that, obviously, with the engine out. So that's the second reason why I'm removing the engine. So this access cover, super useful. It allows you to kind of easily pull the starter off. One of the starter bolts actually holds the engine to the bell housing. There is another bolt point on the top of the bell housing right there. I don't know if it's actually going to focus, but... And then there's two below. So I'm just going to loosen off that stuff, and then I'm going to get my son out to help, and we're going to pull the engine and put it on the engine stand. Before the engine can come off, I have to disconnect some of the wiring, which I've already gone ahead and done. I have to pull this rear bumper plate, and I also have to disconnect the fuel line, so I'm going to do that. And then it's, like I said, those 4 bolts. One of them's already removed, so 3 more bolts and a little bit of elbow grease, and the whole engine should slide back and off the transaxle. Okay, that's it. Once you get the 4 bolts, it's a piece of cake after that, but I'll tell you, getting the 4 bolts on the bell housing is not easy now that there's a car built around it. It was before, I literally slid this onto the chassis, onto the transaxle myself, and bolted it down with like no problems. It took like 5 minutes. Now there's barely any clearance to get a wrench on these bolts. The bottom one's a little tricky, but it was the top driver's side one that was the hardest. But it's off now, so I'm just going to put it on the engine stand, and I'll start tearing it down to do the repairs I want to do on the engine. Okay, so I just pulled off the main fan shroud. You got to disconnect the generator cable, clamp, push that back, and there's a couple of mounting points on the sides, one at the back below the oil cooler. And if it's disconnected from the thermostat underneath, it should just lift right up. I'm doing that because I believe it's easier to get the manifold off with the fan shroud out of the way. And the reason I need to take the manifold off is because I'm replacing the gaskets right in here. There's like a two-sided steel gasket that goes in there. I'm going to replace that. I might actually replace these rubber connectors. So that's what I'm working on now. I also have some exhaust work to do. I'm going to get rid of the heater boxes, replace them with J tubes, and I've got some new exhaust hardware that's got to go on. Okay, so it's been about a week. I got sidetracked at work, had to work some overtime, and I was just waiting for this order. It came in from CIP1. Some of this stuff, these gaskets, manifold gaskets and exhaust gaskets I already had, but I ordered this tin because I felt like the bottom pieces of engine tin were just too far gone. Particularly this side is just it's trashed, so I got to redo that. I think there's just too much air leaking out of there. The top one here, just the corner of it's kind of screwed up. I'm gonna have to leave it as it is for now. Maybe I'll come back to it when I do some more engine work down the road. This side's not as bad, but the tin came in a set for both sides of the lower engine tins, so I'm going to replace this lower one as well. And then when that's done, I got these J tubes that I've got new gaskets for. They're going to get attached, and then I got new intake manifold gaskets. Going to get that all sorted back out. I'm going to start putting this engine back together. Try to get that done today, and then I ordered a new rear main seal, and I watched a couple of tutorials on YouTube, realized I should probably have, there's an O-ring, I should probably have that, and I probably need the, there's a tool that locks the flywheel, and there's also a tool for measuring the end play. So I'm just going to source those and probably go ahead and buy that stuff so I have everything I need to do the job right. But in the meantime, I can get the engine pretty much rebuilt, and I'll just let it sit, and I'll do this. I'll take off the clutch and do the rear main seal a little bit later. That'll be a different video probably. So the aftermarket engine tin is pretty crappy. It's the fit is pretty rough, but it's better than what I had, so it's on there now. You had to kind of monkey around with it, bend it, kind of line up the holes, and not the easiest stuff to work with, but it got done. And I got the two J tubes on there, so now I can hook up the muffler once I get that ready. Went ahead and replaced a lot of the hardware, and I put anti-seize on a lot of the little screws that attach the engine tin. Hopefully down the road it'll make it a lot easier to disassemble and repair. I got the intake manifold back on with new gaskets, so now I'm going to work on the fan shroud, get that sorted out. Okay, so I had to backtrack again and do some damage control. I realized that the front fender wasn't quite centered on the hub. I think what ended up happening is I was concerned about making sure the nose had the same proportions as what I'm seeing in photographs. Unfortunately, it looks like I built the nose just a little too short. I think earlier I've already mentioned that the angle might be a little too steep as well. I'm not going to go back and change that at this point, but I did have to reposition the fender. So what I had to do is I had to actually add a little bit of material to the back side of the arch so I could shift it forward, and then I had to cut some material away from the front of the arch. Unfortunately, I already went ahead and cut the arch on the other side. So what I'm going to do for this, for the driver's side, is because the panel's not actually welded on yet. This panel was already welded. I'm just going to make a brand new panel from scratch. That way I don't have to add material. There's a little bit of a seam of a weld down here. It's not perfectly smooth. It's really minor, but might as well at this stage while I still can. I'm just going to cut the new panel and adjust the arch for the fender a little bit forward. So what ends up happening is that's what the nose ends up looking like. You know, my best estimates were around 4 or 5 inches. You know, I'm at 2.5, so the nose should be out, you know, a little bit further. And like I said, I think it should be a little, the kind of bumper or the front of the nose should be up a little bit as well. But it is what it is. These are the things that kind of come up when you're dealing with, you know, working off photographs and you don't have a lot of measurements. This is the other thing that happens, is this space here is only about 1 inch at its smallest, and I think on an actual Kubel it's more like 2 inches probably. But because this fender needs to be a certain distance up from the hub for clearances, you know, you can't lower it, and as you move it forward this space gets smaller. So it is what it is. I doubt most people will even notice it. Sorry about that. I doubt most people will even notice it, and I think when the headlight fixture gets mounted, it's going to kind of hide that. So, you know, I lost a little bit of sleep over it, but it's not a perfect replica. You know, as been talked about previous, it's built on a thing chassis, so it's already wider at the front. So at this point I'm just going for the spirit of the Kubelwagen, and you know, I'm trying to make the best replica I can with, you know, the tools and the abilities that I got. So just going to keep plugging away, moving forward, and not get hung up on some of these little details. So I went into town yesterday, picked up some more materials, some sheet metal, and went to Princess Auto, picked up a new tool. I originally was going to borrow one of these, but ended up being on sale, so I went ahead and grabbed it. Pipe bender. This thing is rated to go from 1/2 inch to 2 inch pipe. I'm going to be using this to build these seats and the framework for the back seat. The first thing I got to deal with is getting the front seats made. Obviously, that's the priority. So probably going to be a few videos down the road, but that's coming up. It's on the horizon. So the temperatures are getting warmer here in Canada. I had the heaters in the garage going yesterday, and I put a coat of primer on this engine bay. And I'm just going to leave it at that for now. I got to come back to it. Once the engine work I have to do is done, I'm going to come back and decide, you know, what color I'm actually painting, and I'm going to do the I'll finish it with a coating of paint to match the outside of the Kubel. Waiting for parts. Really at this point though, it's pretty much done. But I am going to take off the flywheel and replace the rear main seal, and I'm actually going to replace the clutch plate as well. Now that I have the engine off, I might as well do it. And after that, it's just odds and ends, carburetor, and just getting it set up. And then it's got to go back into the Kubel. So like I said, I got to recut this panel so I can move the fender forward. And then tomorrow, hopefully, I'm going to be moving along and rolling the ribs, putting the ribs on these panels, and that way I can paint them on the inside and actually start going ahead and mounting them on the framework. Heading on vacation next week, so I don't think I'm going to get much work done next week, but those are going to be the next things I'm going to be doing. I'm a little bit behind schedule now, but really it's going to get done when it gets done, so I'm not super worried about it or anything. It's not like I have a hard deadline. Anyways, I think I'm going to wrap this video up here. As always, leave a comment below, like, and definitely come back and see more videos. Thanks for watching.